also recently finished, I mentioned in a couple weeks ago or a stream or two ago that I had been watching the Sleepy Hollow series that they did, in the teens, 2000 teens, and knew it wasn't going to be stellar, because of the time it was done in. But I wanted to watch it because, it's part of my scholarship for Sleepy Hollow, the Legend of Sleepy Hollow. I've taught that story, and that's kind of the one iteration that I hadn't, given a chance to yet. And really liked a lot of aspects of it, really did. But it was just riddled with problems that came from the producers. You could just see that it trickled right down from the producers. And it got me to thinking about some of the problems in writing, like some of the problems in the Sleepy Hollow series was it started out with such a cool idea, but they never really gave any of the ideas time to breathe, time to develop, time to really, let's ride this out and see how cool this idea could develop into. Even by the second season, they were just like you could almost see the producers behind the screen. Well, we change that up. How about we throw that in and let's change that up and throw that, and just like got to shake things up, got to get them viewers, or whatever. And it just the story started to tank, and even you still had a great cast and still had a lot of great ideas within it. It took a long time for it to go all the way down. Tom Misson and John Noble just made that show amazing in terms of just presence, and acting. But the story just had so many problems with it, to the point that by the end, even though by the end of the fourth season, they had to change up, cast left or whatever, but they had a pretty cool idea, a pretty cool thing going by the end of that. But then that was, too late for that to catch on, for anything to be renewed. But it got me thinking about some of the problems that people have with writing. And, in the case of the TV series, it's kind of from the producers meddling. I don't know, maybe some of the writers were having these issues too, or these dumb ideas, but it was kind of, part of the producers meddling. But in watching that in conjunction with reading these novels, it made me think of some of the problems that a lot of writers have. And I got to thinking about some of the writers today. A lot of you listening to the channel, are trying to do your own works, your own comic books, or own stories, one day. And that's great. That's wonderful. It's to be encouraged in every way. But with this new culture that we have, with this all the opportunities with the technology that we have, on the one hand, it's a good thing that we remove the gatekeepers of like the big publishing industry. That's a good thing, but they did serve a purpose. Maybe not the actual publishing industries, but that whole setup back then, the gatekeeping, so to speak, on its most basic level did serve a pretty good purpose of quality control. We're not going to, the companies weren't going to pour their assets and resources into something that they didn't feel was of a certain level of quality, that would make them money. That's how it should work anyway. Of course, there was politics involved and all that kind of stuff, and it just became a crap show. But now with the technology there, you don't need a big company's resources. It can be pretty inexpensively done. I mean, that you can do the big crowdfunding route, but you can even just straight up publish your own thing on Amazon. It's print on demand isn't even a naughty word anymore. It doesn't have a stigma attached to it. Self-publishing isn't even a stigmatized, thing anymore in the culture and technology we live in. But the problem with that is that a lot of new writers are encouraged by that to just get their stuff out there stat. And they end up with really subpar stories. Not that their ideas were bad. Their ideas might have been wonderful. They might have had all the passion for it in the world. But the current system of technology and their current culture of being able to just get things out and find an audience anywhere really discourages you, or doesn't give you any incentive to slow down and take the time to learn how to write first. And I say not only learn how to write, but learn how to edit. And that is every bit as important. So I wanted to talk about that a little bit, and then I'll segue into the reviews of these books, because the novels in particular, though I did enjoy, I'll say this flat out, I really did enjoy Floating Dragon and Summer of Night. There were some problems with both of them that I thought just shouldn't have been problems with these. Now, Peter Straub, this was written in like 80s, and then Summer of Night, I think, came out in maybe 2011 or something like that. So it's not quite the same thing as just new writers trying to, make a name for themselves. But anyway, the importance of learning how to write. So, we can talk about that in the abstract. And you can even pick up some things, you can go on some writing channels or whatever, and you can start learning the right terminology. You can, throw around words like pacing, intention, or character development, and that's all well and good. But really learning how to apply it, it's kind of like being a musician. This is a great analogy. I've been thinking about this a lot because Sound Engraver is always talking about, and in our conversations, she's always talking about music and the importance of practicing and so forth. With music, there's the head knowledge that you have to learn if you're going to be a real serious musician. You do have to learn musical theory. You have to learn the notes and the chords and how it all goes together and what, if it's in this key, what that means. I mean, you just kind of have to know that. That's sort of some book knowledge you have to have. But then depending on which instrument you have, there's a whole other knowledge of application. Sound Engraver has to know how to, she had to learn how to approach the violin. She's always talking to me about, her students and everything and how she'll have to teach them to sit a certain way. Nope, you're holding it the wrong way. No, you need to do this. No, when you're, you imagine the bow on the strings, it's such a big deal. Violin in particular is such a big deal, from something like piano where the sound is kind of ready made. But I remember even from my days playing bass, I mean, you had to, you know, you had to play the bass a certain way. Your fingers had to be off the frets. You couldn't have buzz. You had to watch those, open notes that just, go crazy. And all that's separate from the head knowledge. You can know about keys, you can know about music theory, but the application of it on actually playing the instrument is a totally different thing. All right, so how does that apply to writing? Well, you can go on all these channels and you can hear about pacing, uh, sentence variety, good, clean prose. You can hear about all these things, plot, analysis, outline. You can hear about all of that. And maybe you can even kind of understand it in the abstract, and that's good. But it takes a long, long time, more time than a lot of new writers want to hear that it takes to really learn that innately when it comes to the application of writing your own stories. It just does. It's just something you have to accept. There's a great quote by Ira Plato that I know a lot of you have read before, but when he talks about, look, when you're starting out as a writer, you need to realize that you suck and that you're going to suck for a long time. Now, I mean, he doesn't use that word suck, but it's a hard truth. But what he says, though, he says, now it doesn't mean that you're bad and you should never be doing this. What you need to hold on to is your taste. And I would even translate that as your ideas. You can have the coolest ideas ever. That's you. That's coming from your own personal psyche. Nobody else can come up with the things that you individually can come up with. So hold on to that, because that, if you're serious about being a writer and if you really want to get these stories out there one day, then that's what you need to translate one day. The learning how to write and the practice and the getting the actual experience behind you of writing it out is just there to help you translate and express this wonderful, unique vision that you have. And that's what you need to hold on to. But you need to realize that it's not about really, just writing a lot every day for a year and then you're ready to publish, not necessarily. So you have to learn to write. And the best way to learn how to apply the craft of writing, and I know that not everybody here is a writer, but even those of you who aren't necessarily writers or don't want to write stories, I know you all enjoy stories or you wouldn't be here on my channel. You can still get a lot from what I'm saying about how to judge these stories, in the media and books and so forth, because it's pretty applicable. You have to, the best way to learn the application of writing, it's like a disconnect in your mind. You can know these things in your head about clean prose, plotting, tension, all of that, character development, character arcs. You can know all of that, but when you're writing your own story, it's very hard to think about those things that you know in the abstract and applying them to your own story. You get better at it and you keep going with it, but that's why everybody needs an editor. Everybody needs an editor. Even writers who are really got this down, they need an editor because it's just so hard to look at your reading or look at your writing as the reader would. But the best way to get there, the best way to make progress in that is to practice editing. Practice editing. Start reading the stories you read with a real active eye. The best way to do it is to get involved in a workshop. A lot of popular writers, Stephen King kind of famously said this in his own book on writing. And other popular writers have done this too, where they scoff at, oh, you don't have to go learn to be a writer. Rah, you don't need to take classes. You don't need to. No, you don't. You just need to write. Um, well, good for you, little Mr. Pie in the Sky, Stephen King, who can, pull a story out of your butt every month and get it published. And there's no question it's going to be published. But that's just simply not true. There's a lot of merit to learning how to write, to going and taking classes. Now, you can find some crap classes, of course, that aren't very good and well done, but there's a lot of merit to that. That's not to say that everybody needs to go take classes on writing or get a degree in it like I did or anything like that. Of course not. But you need to approach it seriously as a trade, as a craft. And that means that it needs to be studied, and you need to seek out mentors. You need to seek out, at the very least, a writing group. Grab some friends, or friends online or whatever, some friends that want to put their stories out too, friends that you trust and who are about the same level of you, get a couple people even more, a little more skilled than you are, and get a workshop going. I remember, I offer editing services, and when I do, a lot of people take me up on that, but I offered a workshop service one time. Hardly anybody wanted to do that, because no, I just wanted you to say pretty things about my writing, prof. I didn't want to workshop and hear from a bunch of different people. Well, that's the best way to do it. It's the best way to do it, because not only do you hear feedback about a lot of different varied feedback about your writing, but you also get the practice of looking critically at other people's writing. And that's the best way, to practice editing your own writing. You need the practice of editing other people's. It's the best way to bridge that gap between your subconscious mind and conscious mind.